My Lords, I beg leave to move the amendment standing in my name on the order paper. I draw attention to my positions in the Countryside Alliance, including chairman, which I have declared in the register of members' interests. I regret detaining the House. I appreciate there is important business next on the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill. However, as this bill leaves the House, I do feel there are important issues which need to be addressed. I would like to make 2 points at the outset. First, none of what I'm going to say is an attack on my noble friend, the Minister. He is a good friend and a good man who has been given the impossible job of defending a bill about which many of us have considerable reservations and who has done so with unfailing grace and humour. I am genuinely sorry to differ from him on this measure. Second, every one of us in this House, every one of us wants to promote animal welfare. I certainly do. I feel strongly that animals must be treated properly. But whatever the good intentions of those promoting this bill, I fear that it is not a wise measure as drafted. In fact, if we take a step back, it is actually an incredible measure. It seriously proposes that the effect of any government policy on the welfare of animals may be considered by an unfettered statutory committee. And ministers must respond to this committee's reports. When the bill started, this measure applied only to vertebrates. Now it applies to cephalopod molluscs and decapod crustaceans. That was one of the few amendments made to this bill, and that was by the government. So at the height of a pandemic, which has killed thousands of people and cost our economy billions, we have decided to devote time to passing a law to ensure that no government policy can hurt the feelings of a prawn. The government rejected every other amendment put to it. We pointed out that sentience isn't actually defined in the legislation. Apparently, that doesn't matter. What matters is that ministers must have regard to sentience, even if we don't know what it actually is. We asked for safeguards to ensure the expertise of the committee's members. We were told that such protections weren't necessary. We asked for constraints to the committee's scope. We were told that limits to the committee's unfettered remit weren't necessary either. Crucially, we asked why the balancing provisions in the Lisbon Treaty, which specifically exempt religious rights, cultural traditions and regional heritage, were not included. Why this bill goes so much further than the EU measure which it claims to replace. We were told that this balancing provision wasn't necessary either. In fact, apparently no change was necessary. The government has been able to ignore every single concern expressed largely on this side by relying on the kindness of strangers, uncritical support for the measures which would have guaranteed the defeat of any amendment. And I wonder if the government will come to regret that. I'm sure ministers do not intend that this new committee will get out of hand. I'm sure they intend to appoint sensible people on it. I'm sure they believe their own rhetoric when they say that ministers decide, so they will resist the committee's recommendations if necessary. But this is of little reassurance when the government has already capitulated in the face of a social media campaign to introduce the committee in the first place. It's like saying, don't worry, we're going to make sure the burglar won't take anything from your house, but we're going to let him in to make helpful suggestions about your security. This committee will set its own priorities. It will decide its own agenda. It will rove across government at will and demand answers to its recommendations. The government may believe it's answering public concern by setting up the committee in this particular way, but I fear it's making a massive rod for its own back. This measure departs from the usual practice of taking careful and specific steps to ensure animal welfare by injecting a broad and ill-defined principle into our public administration. And the danger is that in doing so, it will effectively, if unwittingly, hand an institutional footing to the animal rights agenda. We are giving that single-issue ideology, one which can be uncompromising and extreme, leverage and power without thinking through the consequences. My Lords, we're trying to beat a mutating virus. We're trying to level up to build back better. We need government to take better decisions and more quickly. We need to get things done faster. Yet we're putting in place a barely constrained mechanism which is simply bound to glue up government. And I'm afraid I do differ with my noble friend in that. At best, even with sensible people in place, the committee will put spanners in the works because, frankly, that will be its job. It will make it harder for ministers to deliver, to deliver, to take difficult balancing decisions which they sometimes must, or to ignore populist sentiment. And at worst, without the necessary safeguards in place, the committee risks becoming a Trojan horse, used especially to attack wildlife management, farming, or the well-being and way of life of our rural communities. And we know this is a real risk, because the animal rights agenda is in plain sight, and because its proponents are already incessantly abusing judicial review to try and force government to do its will. My Lords, it is usually this House which provides a robust check on measures propelled by populist winds. Yet we have passed this bill with almost no amendment except to extend its scope to beasts such as cuttlefish. Some noble lords may remember that 30 years ago it was only the sober intervention of this House which prevented the Dangerous Dogs Bill from inadvertently making it a strict liability, imprisonable offence for a dog to cause injury by accidentally knocking someone off their bicycle. That bill had foolishly been driven through all its common stages in a single day. But today, we're showing ourselves more inclined to bend without sufficient thought to populism, and now it will fall to members of the House of Commons to address the deficiencies in this proposal. My Lords, we all want to advance animal welfare, but the sentience provisions in the Lisbon Treaty had little or nothing to do with a succession of admirable legislation which for over a century has been passed by this Parliament. In fact, with Brexit, we have the freedom to pass laws to protect animals that would not have been possible before, for instance, to address puppy smuggling. Even before this sentience bill is passed, other government bills to protect animals have been introduced or announced, which only goes to prove that this bill, creating this committee in this way, isn't necessary to protect animals. My Lords, in conclusion, I have offered these remarks in the hope that even as this bill leaves this House, there is still a chance that its serious deficiencies will be addressed, and that we will return to focusing on specific, workable measures to improve the welfare of animals in ways which we all want to see and can all support. My Lord, I beg to move.
The question is that the amendment in the name of Lord Herbert of South Downs be agreed to.
My Lords, I wish to say